We do not need to overcome our past selves. I feel that, especially now on social media and everything, we are so constantly reminded of our past and the mistakes we've made and the misjudgments, and we just overall we are so completely focused on getting as far away from the person that we used to be as we can. And I think it takes a lot of time to sort of realize that our past selves really weren't such a bad thing. We had to be the person that we were in order to be the person that we are today. And without them, we wouldn't have this perspective that we have now when we look back and we see all the things that we did wrong. If you think back to the person that you were in those moments, you didn't necessarily see a problem with what you were doing. And you didn't necessarily see the potential outcome that that decision was going to lead to. And you never really can, if you think about it, because no matter how old you get, no matter how experienced you get in anything that you do, you're always going to continue to make mistakes. No one is perfect, and that's just a natural error of things, is that you will continue to make them. There's no avoiding it, because no matter how many times you do something, the next time that you do it, it will be a new experience, because nothing repeats itself completely. Nothing is a perfect copy of of its former self in terms of human experience, that is. I feel that we are so entirely focused on erasing the person that we used to be, and because we spend so much time hating that person and just approaching them with such a negative mindset, so as to convince ourselves that we can't return to that person. We cannot take anything from that person. We cannot learn anything from that person, because they're below us. They are so much worse than the person that we are today. Although this mindset that we have now, the mindset that you wake up with, the mindset that you go to bed with, you wouldn't have it if you didn't make the mistakes, and you wouldn't have it if you weren't the person that you were before. Because I believe that our current self is a cumulative version of all of our past versions. We have layers, and we never really erase the previous layer, but instead we just build on top of it. It's like repaving a road. You don't scrape the road all the way down to the dirt below it. You just scrape off the top layer. And sometimes you don't even scrape off the top layer. You just put a new layer right on top of it and flatten it down and hope that that new layer is going to perform better than the old layer. And often it does. But that new layer wouldn't have anything to sit on if we completely scraped off all the layers below it, right? It wouldn't be possible, because then you would just have to, if you scraped all the way down the beginning, you would have to rebuild all those layers to get to the level of the sidewalk so that it's flush and you're not driving through basically a divot, right? So, I mean, if you truly do want to erase all of the experience, if you could, in a sense, erase all of the layers and all of the previous versions of yourself, the person that you would be is nowhere near the person that you are now. You would frankly just be starting over from scratch. You would have to relive all of those past experiences. You would have to remake all of those past mistakes that you made, and hope that you wouldn't make them in the same fashion that you did before. But that's just not true. I think that we often come to the thought that, oh, if I could just redo that moment, I would have done it better. Or if I could just go back and change this one thing, then everything would be better. But if you went back, would you, even if you had the same mindset that you have now, would you change it? Would you really? Because then you're altering the person that you are now. assuming we're talking as the past version of ourselves, you would be a completely different person. And it's not natural to be able to do that, which is why we're not able to. And part of being human and part of being alive and living and experiencing is that there's no perfect way to do it. There's no set outline. You're supposed to make that for yourself. You can't the way you follow a path is by creating it. Someone had to create that path before, and in human experience we have to create that for ourselves. The only way to create the path is by walking it. That's why we are the person that we are today, is because we didn't have an outline. Because if we had an outline, we'd all be perfect, but we'd all be the same, and that's boring. And that if we're all the same, there's no way for us to innovate. There's no way for us to improve, because there's no discrepancies. There's no shortcomings. There'd be nothing to improve on, because we would all be the same, and we would all be okay with that, because we would be fine with plateauing and being just completely the same. And you don't get anywhere by being the same. As you can see from reflecting on your past self, is that you're a completely different person than you were a year ago. I'm assuming. I mean, obviously that may not be the case for everybody, but in general terms, all of us are completely different people than we were a year ago. And whether you're in a worse place than you were a year ago, or if you're in a better place, you are a different person, and you have more experience under your belt, and you have more knowledge, and what you choose to do with that knowledge and experiences is completely up to you. However, the person that you will be in a year is dependent on how you treat yourself now, and how you treat the decisions and the experiences that you move through will completely affect and impact the person that you will be in a year. And I think that reflecting on this now is extremely important, because if we had this conversation with ourselves a year ago, we may be a completely different person now than the person that we are now, if that makes any sense. If we had this conversation with ourselves a year ago, we could be a completely different person now than we actually are. We could be more successful. We could be more diligent in anything. We could have better people around us. We could be where we wanted to be if we had these often reflections, or had these frequent reflections with ourselves, to keep us conscious and make sure that our decisions are directed. But all in all, you can't just simply erase the person that you once were, even if no matter how badly you want to. They will always be a part of you, because you wouldn't be the person you are today without them. And the sooner you realize that and stop trying to fight the person that you used to be, and rather embrace them and thank them for making those mistakes before so you don't have to make them now, the sooner you can kind of learn to love yourself and enjoy where you're at and flourish in the places that you have gotten yourself to. And this will only create better things for you. It'll make the path much clearer on where you need to be and what you need to do to get there. And I'm starting to ramble a little bit because these are completely unplanned videos, but you need to stop worrying about scraping away the layers and instead building on top of them with fresh cement and fresh asphalt, whatever you want to use in that phrase. But take what you've learned, take what you've experienced, and take the mistakes that you've made, and instead of trying to erase them completely, flip them and use them to your advantage in order to be in a better spot in the future than you are now.